we panicked. We're in full panic. Some of us have been podcasting and video casting for 6 to 12 hours. We are here at, I guess I need to also stream it to the at HomeCon thing. How does one do that? I'm asking you. Okay, anywho, we're going to start anyhow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Crowe from the American Sci-Fi Classics track, and with me, as always, my co-director, Mr. Gary Mitchell, 2 internets away from me. It's Gary. And in between us is, please introduce yourself. It's Mr. You introduce yourself. I don't know.
Hi, I'm Rick Tetrault. I'm the host of Starbase 66 and also on Star Trek All Access here on the Cosmic Potato Network, and occasionally guest on the Cosmic Potato and Captain Game Show and any other show where they don't lock the doors before I slip in.
And let's see, 1 internet south of me, Mr. Branden Ushio. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfectly. You pronounced it better than my grandma ever did. So, yeah, I am from Fandom, which is a show that celebrates pop culture, pop art, part of the Geek Nerd Network. It's, and like Rick, I am happy to go anywhere and everywhere, assuming there are not little ones running around my house trying to keep me from podcasting.
Exactly. Mine are on vacation. So, and let's see, 1, 2 internets to the west of me. That is Scott. Please introduce yourself.
I am, in fact, Scott Matteson, a frequent contributor to various podcasts on the Cosmic Potato Network, host of the Prime Direction, also a Cosmic Potato podcast. And in addition to all the various podcasting gigs, I am a freelance independent graphic artist whose work can be seen on Twitter at PlanetRise, or you can visit my website, www.planetrisecreative.com. But wait until after the show.
Yeah, don't do it right now. And in the Facebook group and on the YouTube, when we post this, I'll post links to all all of your things. Hey, all those things, all of your social medias and junk, so people can follow you from here to there.
I really don't want to see a link to Scott's junk. I'm sorry.
Nobody wants that.
I'm glad that you said that, Rick, because that's what I thought. That's why I laughed.
Order. I will have order. So here's what we're doing.
Sounds like someone is unhappy he lost the Jeopardy game.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Gary, you missed this. We just played a game of Jeopardy, and the questions were just about Masters of the Universe.
Oh, best character is Trapjaw.
Pretty much, yeah. That's it.
Now, see, you're thinking of He-Man, Gary. We were talking about the live-action theatrical film Masters of the Universe.
Oh, best character is Trapjaw.
It remains.
It stands.
He had the wisdom to avoid the movie.
I walked right into that one.
So what we're doing, for hopefully those of you who have not seen Classic Sci-Fi Court before, is the remaining 4 people besides me, the one not wearing the Ric Flair robe, the ones not wearing the Ric Flair robe, unless you all have personal Ric Flair robes you'd like to. Okay, good. But what we're doing is you guys are prosecuting or defending attorneys, and what you're doing is presenting to the court, the Classic Sci-Fi Court, a movie that people you've heard, your enemies perhaps, or just general stick-in-the-muds, have complained about and said are bad or, not fun to watch, and we don't have time for those kind of people here at Classic Sci-Fi Court. So I want you guys to present a case of any individual movie, and I, as the Classic Sci-Fi Court judge, will rule on whether or not you should seek out this movie and or tell people who say it's bad that they can kiss your butt. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna randomly do my finger and do like this. It's like a whammy, but it's just my finger.
Well, I was going to say, Joe, do you want me to go first since I've done this before, and that way they get the idea of what happens?
That, Gary, is why I pay you the big bucks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Attorney Gary Mitchell, please present your case before the court.
All right. So, I'm just trying to get my screen to behave because my mouse is hiding. There we go. All right. So, my movie I will be defending is one I've defended before. So, if you've seen Classic Classic Court before, you're going to be getting a flashback. But I think everybody here, this should be new. And let me get the PowerPoint going. I will be defending League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Awesome.
All right,
going
Joe,
into the deep end right away. All right.
Yeah, we don't do the easy cases.
No. So now, Rick,
So,
Branden,
Joe,
Scott.
I believe you have to.
Yes, I'm about to. Rick, Branden, Scott, you did not have to prepare a PowerPoint demonstration for this evening.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not counting points off. But Gary, this is how prepared Gary is.
Hey.
He's had this thing for like 2 years.
Hey, I made this PowerPoint. I'm getting every single piece of use out of it that I can.
Exactly. And
My God, I did not waste an hour and a half of my life creating this just to do it once.
Instead, you're going to waste an hour of your life now. Anywho, let's do this. There it is.
All right. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, 90s steampunk fun. So that is my movie. That is the poster. We shall start. Come on. There we go. With the basic facts about the movie. The movie was released in 2003 based on the 1999 comic book written by Alan Moore, who we'll get to more on him later, and Kevin O'Neill. The script was by James Dale Robinson, comics writer. Starman he wrote was really, really good. The film grossed $175 million worldwide at the box office with a rental revenue of $48.6 million and DVD sales of, as of 2003, of $36.4 million. The charges against the movie, people saying that it's bad. There were supposed to be more League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movies. This was supposed to be the start of a franchise, but look at the numbers. The movie has a stellar 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. And Roger Ebert gave the movie 1 star, and in his review he said, quote, "The movie is has inexplicable motivations, causes without effects, effects without causes, and general lunacy." And the final charge against the movie that is held against it is that it did make Sean Connery quit acting.
Which I count as a bonus. That's actually a plus.
Oh, shots fired from the jury pool.
It was time.
So it has nothing to do with his talent. It has everything to do with his being a woman-beating asshole. But
that too.
See, yeah.
The cast has Sean Connery, the aforementioned asshole, as Alan Quartermain. It had Nurison Shaw as Captain Nemo, Shane West as Tom Sawyer, Stuart Townsend as Dorian Gray, Peter Wilson, and I just love saying the name Peter Wilson as Mina Harker. Jason Fleming was Dr. Jekyll and Edward Hyde. Tony Curran played Rodney Skinner, the imposter Invisible Man. And Richard Roxburgh, oops, I dropped my mouse. Richard Roxburgh.
One thing I will not allow in this court is dropping mice.
Richard Roxburgh was Professor James Moriarty, our bad guy. So, Exhibit A for why the movie is actually really good. It does star Sean Connery as Alan Quartermain. Sean Connery you may know as James Bond. Sean Connery was the epitome of cool in the 60s. He was the epitome of the older badass in his 60s. He was a very excellent old Robin Hood. He was Bond, James Bond. He was the man who would be king. He was Juan Sanchez Villarobos Ramirez, the only Scottish Egyptian Spaniard in movie history.
He was the man now, dog.
Yes. He was the world's best Scottish Russian sub-captain. He was the second best James Bond. That's another panel. Don't at me. He explained the Chicago way to Kevin Costner. He was Indiana Jones's dad. He plays Alan Quatermain, British hero in this movie. And once again, you may have heard of him as James Bond. Exhibit B for why the movie is good. It has a steampunk Captain Nemo. The movie made Captain Nemo from India, like in the actual novel. It wasn't just James Mason. They made him basically a Hindu ninja, which was really cool. He had a very cool car, which you can see on the screen in the lower left. He had a very cool Nautilus. They kept the fact that Nemo was a scientific and engineering genius. And did I mention they turned him into a ninja in this movie? Exhibit C, Mina Harker. They changed her from the comic. In the comic, she was an intellectual tactician with no real powers. And they turned her into a half-vampire leather aficionado. So we'll call that a draw. She is still mostly the brains of the team and had some very excellent fight scenes. And again, had very cool vampire powers, turning into bats and that kind of thing. And did I mention the leather outfit? Exhibit
Can
C,
you go back
Tom
to that
Sawyer.
so I can see the leather outfit again?
Sure.
Let's pause slowly.
Let us drink in the leather. I believe when you become a vampire, you are issued a leather outfit, whether you need it or not.
The dog likes it
See,
too.
there you go. Exhibit D, they added Tom Sawyer. He was an addition to the movie. He's not in the comic. Apparently, he was added because they felt like Americans need an American character because no one will ever identify with a British character. Why would anyone from America do that?
No.
What you say about Tom Sawyer's company is what you say about British high society. Catch the myths, catch the myth, catch the mystery, catch the steampunk ship.
So good.
Exhibit D, Mr. Hyde. In the comic book, Mr. Hyde looks like a big, weird ape guy. He is a mostly evil anti-hero, and he rapes the Invisible Man to death. In the movie, he looks like a big, weird rubber guy. He's a practical effect, minimal CGI. He's not that evil anti-hero, and I cannot stress this enough, he does not rape anyone to death.
I'll give you that as a plus.
Yes. Exhibit E, Sean freaking Connery. He is still in the movie in case you forgot. I'm moving on. Exhibit F, Dorian Gray, another movie addition who was not in the comic. I thought this was actually a very decent version of the character. I liked the way he was played by Stuart Townsend. I find it funny to note that Stuart Townsend took this part after being released from playing Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings movies. So this makes the second role in a row where he was cast as a long-lived human being. He is a decent turncoat / secondary bad guy and has a very cool fight scene with Mina at the end where he loses. He's very pretty, but not as pretty as Vigo.
Nobody is.
Exhibit G, the Invisible or an Invisible Man. And I do have to stress that he is an Invisible Man, not the Invisible Man, because the studio couldn't get the rights to the actual Invisible Man movie-wise, because Universal has that guy in a death grip. So they went with this new see-through man. And in the movie, he is not a bad guy, not the traitor, unlike in the comics where he is. And I do have to mention this again, that he does not get raped to death by Mr. Hyde. Exhibit H, the Nautilus. Did I mention that there is a cool steampunk Nautilus? There is a cool steampunk Nautilus in this movie. The Disney version, as you see below, yes, is indeed cooler, but this one is still cool. My favorite thing about it is its size-changing properties, because it goes from being a massive ship in the ocean to being able to fit in the canals of Venice and then back to big as they need it.
Yeah.
That is fine, fine engineering.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Exactly. Exhibit AI, Alan Moore is a nutter. That is a factor that that the movie cuts out, very based from the comic. The comic has very odd appearance by Fu Manchu, which was vaguely racist. Alan Moore believes he is a real magician who can cast spells. It was after this movie he started refusing to let his name be on movie adaptations of his work. He was the man who came up with the idea of having Mr. Hyde rape the Invisible Man to death. See Exhibit D. And for no particular reason, I include this picture of my favorite Blu-ray that I actually own. It does not have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but it is a very wonderful Let's Annoy Alan Moore That These Exist collection. Closing arguments. In case you forgot, Sean Connery is in this movie. And it has 100% less rape.
The face on I totally did. Mwah. Mwah.
Gentlemen, that is my case. I present to you defending League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is, in fact, a fun movie to watch. Is it a good movie? No, but it's fun. And no rape.
I only saw it the one time when it came out. I saw it in the cinema, in case there's any Brits listening. I honestly don't remember very much about it. And that was kind of its biggest crime to me, is it was unremarkable because it had so much promise. I never read the comics, but the concept is so awesome. And the cast was phenomenal. Although one of the biggest strikes against it is this was right after, if I'm remembering correctly, right after La Femme Nikita went off the air. And I was very excited to see Peta Wilson in something else. And she was criminally underused in this film. And then I haven't, she may have done other things since, but I am unaware of them. So there was the sub suddenly fitting in a canal and all of that stuff. I just remember it being meh. And for a movie with this much potential and these really awesome characters, for it to be meh was just kind of a crime unto itself.
Further comments from our jury pool.
From the Peanut Gallery?
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is factual or if this is one of those apocryphal legends that gets put in afterwards, but I heard that Sean Connery turned down the role of Morpheus because he didn't get it. He's like Morpheus in The Matrix. And he's like, this just makes no sense to me. I'm not going to do this. And so he turned it down. And then all of a sudden it became this huge hit. And he was all like, okay, I'm not going to turn down another movie just because I don't get it anymore. Because obviously, like, there's that. And so the very next movie that came across his desk was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And he was like, I don't get this, but I didn't get Matrix either. So I'm going to sign up for this one.
He got struck with a little bit of FOMO around that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, not only did he miss out on The Matrix, he also got offered the role of Gandalf.
Yep.
And he turned that down, and it blew up. And that's when he finally went, okay, yeah, I've got to do this, even if I don't understand it.
Oh, nerds are starting to rule cinema. I better do this.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything extra to throw in that hasn't already been covered.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it is kind of fun to watch, but there's just so many issues with the movie. With some of the weak writing and the some plot elements don't necessarily make sense. And then changes from the source material, some that did and some that did not have to happen.
Okay, I am going to retreat into my judge's chambers in my brain, and I'll return with a verdict in right now. I am...
Oh, hold up that gavel, Joe. Let people see your gavel.
There's the gavel, ladies and gentlemen. Look at
That
that.
is awesome.
That's the real Mjolnir, right?
Yeah. And before everybody, before they made the little tiny little toys for your 7-year-old, I got a toy for a 40-year-old. Woo! All right. So anyway, I liked this movie at the time. Upon looking back, I go, but the comic book was so good and also so problematic. And the movie fixed some of the big things that were wrong with the comic. But as far as just, I'm gonna rule this movie not guilty of being terrible, and also not guilty of including rape scenes, because it didn't. Like the comic book did, gratuitously and weird. And thank you, Attorney Mr. Gary Mitchell, for your defense. Now I will turn it over to let's see, who's ready? If anybody wants to just again, you didn't have to bring a PowerPoint.
I can go if you want me to.
Okay.
Brandon, I accede to you, sir.
All right. So the
Ooh.
apparently I am not allowed to go next according to God. Joe, put Mjolnir down. Put it down.
And God said, "You shut up."
So
this may be my final broadcast.
It was thundering in the previous thing that we were doing at your place. What the heck?
Well, that was coming from mine.
Yeah.
Okay, good grief.
That's a fast-moving storm to get from Florida to Michigan.
Where is everybody, by the way? I'm in Alabama, deepest, darkest Alabama. Gary's in Georgia. Where
Florida.
are you guys?
I'm in Central Florida, Tampa area.
Southwest Michigan.
Oh, okay.
and I'm in Utah. So we span the country right now.
Heck yeah. This is a nationwide classic sci-fi court. Very cool. Very cool. So, Branden, if you want to go.
All right. I do have some visuals if you would like to pull those up to aid me while I'm going.
Excellent.
So the movie that I have on my list is
bless you.
that I am defending is one that I was told was trash talked in an earlier panel that I have to defend. This one is
just a second, but I just saw you talk about this like 15 minutes ago.
I know. So in my previous panel, we did one about bad movies that we love, and apparently some people in this room think that this is just a bad movie. So I am of the opinion that this is not a bad movie. This is a good and important movie. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Now, this movie was important to me because, I mean, I'm of the right generation, right? Like, I was 9 years old when this came out, which means that I was all about the Ninja Turtles. However, I'm also Asian. I'm half Japanese. And when I was 9 years old, I did not see Asians on television or on movies. So this movie, while accused of being bad, I think is important for reasons other than the story or the plot line or even the Ninja Turtles. Some of the arguments against it, the Radio Times, they have a review of it that says, let's see if I can pull it up right here. It says, writer and director Stuart Gillard tries to inject some life into the project by including some tongue-in-cheek scenes in 17th century Japan, but it quickly degenerates into half-hearted, cartoonish action. Now, okay, if you're going to go see a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, I think you know that you're going to be getting some half-hearted, cartoonish action going on. I mean, that is not something that anybody is going to argue with you on. So I feel like the critiques against it are not valid in that aspect because it's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It's not the works of Shakespeare. So the important part is the diversity. The cast in this, let me see if I can pull up IMDb real quick. Oh, if I still had it up, that would be useful, but I don't. So in IMDb, you can go through the list of characters, and you can see that I've been to it before because, well, I love this movie. And here in the list in the cast, you've got Elias Koteas, who's Casey Jones, and Paige Turco, who's April O'Neil, Stuart Wilson, who's a bad guy, but then you start getting to names like Sab Shimono and Vivian Wu, and you get the people who are in the prosthetics that, you know, it doesn't really matter what race they are because, well, they're under a lot of green rubber. You have people like Mak Takano. You've got Steve Akahoshi. This was important to me as a child. And so this movie was not just a cheesy Ninja Turtles film. This movie was something that showed diversity because for decades, Hollywood has been known to whitewash Asian roles because they don't sell as well. But on this one, for the most part, your characters are Asian, with the white characters mostly being the bad guys. Not all of them, but mostly being the bad guys. There was a movie called 21, which was about blackjack players in Vegas, and it was based off of a real-life story and a real-life team from MIT, based on the book Bringing Down the House. And they were all Asian, mostly Asian men. And in the movie, they got recast nearly completely as white people, except you had the exotic Asian woman and the stoner Asian dude. And I mean, they just played on stereotypes there. And that's the kind of stuff that even as recently as 2008, I think it was, that Asian Americans were cast or were uncast, whitewashed, so to say. I mean, if you recast Coach Carter, it would have been an issue because, you know, if you recast him with a white guy, even if it was a great actor, it would have been an issue. So I think that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 gets an unfit or an undue rap because honestly, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You don't go to that expecting an amazing story. You go to it expecting samurais and ninjas. And then you get the added side benefit of it being a racial or to have racial importance and diversity. And I don't mean to play the race card here, but I am.
You should.
I mean, it's
valid.
It's something that you don't realize if you don't grow up seeing it. You just don't realize. I have heard other complaints about the movie being about the lack of science behind it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. My co-host pointed out something really, really good to me in the last panel. I said, you know, I like that, but people complained about the time limit in the time travel mechanism and how come they had to have that time limit and they had to be in the same place. And she said, wait, a movie about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles going back in time, and their complaint is the time travel mechanic. I mean, you know, but you know, they have this magic scepter that transports them back to 17th century Japan. And as I've been finding out, since this movie has come out, quantum physics has actually come out and said, hey, this entanglement thing, it works across space and time, but things have to be lined up in the right way. And some quantum physics theories have actually gone on to be like, hey, this could actually fit in with those. So over time, it's proven more scientifically true. So that's my argument for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, which I don't know if it has a subtitle. I could not find the subtitle.
Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time? I thought that was just the video game.
That's the game.
Oh,
Okay.
it is? Okay. It might just be 3 then.
Yeah, I think it's just 3. On the poster, it says the turtles are back, ... in time. So, like, honestly, you're going to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did speak with Kevin Eastman, one of the creators, about this, and he said that it completely had his blessing and that he thought that it was a great adaptation. So that's my case for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Thank you, Attorney Branden Ushio. I appreciate your turtle-based perspective and also your mutant and ninja and teenage perspective for the case. Comments from the rest of the jury pool.
I have to, not because I want to be mean, but I do feel like I should step in to say a few words on behalf of the prosecution.
I would like to point out that this is the man who loves Masters of the Universe.
Hey,
Let's try it, John.
no getting ahead of ourselves. It's possible that might come up again before this show is over. But a few things that should be pointed out about the movie, if we're going to be fair and balanced, is that compared to the first two films in the series, the writing is a little bit, I'm not exactly sure the best way to describe it, a bit more juvenile, I guess. The way that the third one is written seems to be aimed towards a younger crowd than the first two, which I found unnecessary, but not necessarily damning. But
are you sure you just weren't older by this point?
No.
No, the third movie is much more blunted than the first two.
No, yeah, I will 100% give him that.
Objectively,
Ninja Turtles started out, TMNT started out with the dudes and the woes, and it inspired the Saturday Night Live spinoff, Wayne's World. It inspired Wayne's World, and then it seems like by the end of this one, Wayne's World was inspiring Ninja Turtles. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it became some of the writing became a bit of a parody of itself.
Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest sin that the third movie commits is whether by choice or not, they did not have Jim Henson's Creature Shop back to do the outfits and the mechanics for the turtle faces in this one, and it shows. The costume effects for the turtles are of a much lower quality than the first two movies.
I honestly can't remember if I saw it or not, so I can't.
Okay.
I actually saw this in the theater, and I had a ball with it. And I remember at the time all the people saying, "This is terrible. It sucks." I'm like, "It's got Ninja Turtles and samurai. What more do you need?"
Ninjas and
I had
samurais.
a ball.
What year did it come out?
93, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had just started working at a movie theater.
That is a valid perspective, since you just started working in a movie theater, and in the 90s, you didn't have a lot of options as far as turtles in movies, so you had to go to this one.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is why I'm not sure if I saw it or not, because I have this memory that the feudal Japan stuff was really cool, but the encapsulating before and after really kind of sucked. Does that track, or is that just me fabricating memories?
Well, I mean, basically, they went to they got an ancient Japanese staff from a flea market, and I mean, it wasn't great. But then you had the Fish Out of Time story there with the honor guard that got transported to New York, and they ran around and ate pizza and didn't want to leave because it was so cool.
Which really had no impact on the larger plot. Any scene that took place,
except if they couldn't get that one guy back, then the turtles would be stuck in feudal Japan forever.
True enough.
And so if they hadn't have shown how much they enjoyed modern day New York, then it would make no sense for them to want to stay and leave everything from their time.
Yeah. All right.
So I still have no idea if I saw it or not.
Your Honor, I withdraw the question.
Well, while the jury pool and the defense attorney were conferring, I have consulted my inner samurai, and I have I'm rendering the verdict of not guilty of being terrible. And if you think it is, come on, guys. It has 4 things. Here are my 4 bases, if you will, for the not guilty verdict. 1, teenagers. Every movie with teenagers in it, I would say most movies, there's good parts. Mutants. 100% of movies with mutants in them are excellent. This is not up for debate because I'm the judge. And thirdly, ninjas. Movies with ninjas, I would say, are batting about 80-20 on the awesomeness scale. And finally, movies with turtles in them, there just aren't that many. And as of the numbering of this movie, that means there are 3 more movies with turtles in them than there were when this series began. So for that reason, not guilty. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
I find it very telling that you put ninjas in that list, but not samurai.
Dang it. I recuse myself.
Samurai need no help.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
That is fair. All right. Mr. Scott or Mr. Rick, who would like to go into the defense next?
Go ahead, Scott.
All righty.
Okay. I'm sure this is going to come as a galloping shock to many. I'm going to defend 1987's Masters of the Universe.
Yes.
Starring Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, Frank Langella as Skeletor, John Cypher as Man-at-Arms, Chelsea Fields as Tila, Courtney Cox as Julie, Robert Duncan McNeil as Kevin Corrigan, Anthony DeLongis as Blade, and then a bunch of other people. Who cares? James Tolkien as Detective Lubick, Christina Pickles as the Sorceress, and some guy in a big furry suit as Beastman.
You left out one very important person.
And in a brief yet important appearance as Sarad, we have Pons Mar.
The great Pons Mar.
His name is Pons, and that's why he deserves mention.
Did you mention the villain of this film?
That's what you didn't mention.
Frank Langella as Skeletor?
Yeah.
He did.
He did?
Thank you. I thought I did.
I heard Frank Langella. I didn't hear Meg Foster as Evil Lynn though, with her crazy eyes.
Oh, good call. I missed it. I was too busy trying to line up everybody else. I think the movie is great. Now, is everyone great in it? Not necessarily. Is the script great? Maybe not. Was it made by a first-time director? Sure was. Was it produced and distributed by Canon Films? Yeah. Was it trying to capitalize on a successful toy line and animated series? Absolutely. But it's still a whole bunch of fun. And when you look at the overall body of work that was put out by Canon Films, it's probably easily considered one of their better films as far as production quality. They didn't have a whole lot in the way of Canon budget, and they got a lot of their budget from Mattel, since they were making the toys that they were hoping to market with this movie. And I think they put that money to pretty good use. The production value is actually not all that bad for this. The special effects can be kind of fun, and every frame of this movie, when you watch it, it screams the mid-'80s. So if that is a time that you look back on fondly, or can sometimes look back on it fondly, then this is definitely a film that you can pop in the Blu-ray and let it lovingly take you back to that wonderful time, those halcyon days of the 80s. And I think I'm putting up a screen share there, Joe, if you want to share that. What I consider to be the ultimate defense of the film. Frank Langella.
Yes.
No doubt he elevates this movie beyond what it has any right to be. Frank Langella weighed in heavily on the costume design for his character to make sure that he would look as good as possible and match with characterization. Every line of dialogue that he's given, even if it's not the best quality of writing, he delivers it like it's Shakespeare. He believes in it, and you can tell that he is invested in the best way every moment that he's on screen. Not only that, but he had an absolute ball making this movie, and it shows. And even still, up to today, over 30 years, over 30 years later, it's still one of his favorite roles that he's ever done. I would go back and watch this movie again just for him. And that's probably about the best that I can say about it. It's a fun film. It's a whole mess of fun. It's a whole mess of fun. And I love the soundtrack.
Defense rests?
Yes.
Okay. Comments from the jury pool?
Yeah, the production design, I'm glad you mentioned that. William Stout is a genius. He did this movie. He did Return of the Living Dead. He worked, I think, on Ghostbusters as well. He is a very talented production designer, and he put so much work into that movie. If you get a chance to see him talk about it, he tells some wonderful stories. We've had him at Dragon Con a few times. And he's
Joe mentioned that before.
I mentioned the pompadour, the ascot, the leather jacket.
Yes, the man is definitely Hollywood. And it has, you're right, Frank Langella is a joy. And it has one of my favorite scenes in movies, period. And it's right at the end when Skeletor's, God King Skeletor. And when He-Man breaks free of his chains and grabs the sword, before he's even, I have the power, Eva Lynn looks at the two henchmen and goes, "Let's go." And they're like, "What?" And she's like, no, it's gone. And I love a smart villain who's like, "Yeah, it's done. It's time to go."
Shut it down.
Laying the seeds for the sequel. Because with her and Blade and Karg saying, "You know what? Gather the troops, signal the retreat. We're out of here." That's saying, okay, we're going to set her up as a possible villain for the second one, or perhaps even a spoiler, because you can tell. And this is one of those. Defense wakes up. We're reopening this a little bit. You can tell as you go back and watch the movie. You can tell when you look at the character of Eva Lynn from the beginning of the movie to the end. You can see the shift in her character as the devoted right hand of Skeletor, there to do what he wants and work towards his vision, and also having obviously a degree of affection for Skeletor. And as the movie progresses and her character realizes he doesn't really care about me, he just wants his power, and I am disposable. And you can, it's not the most obvious thing, but you can tell that.
Wait,
her
are you accusing this movie of having a subtle moment in it?
Ouch.
You can tell that her character is starting to realize that, and that hits its tipping point when she decides, we're going to retreat, and I'm going to leave him here to be defeated by the good guys because we are not going to win.
Yeah, she knows what she's seen this before. It's like, yeah, I know what happens from here. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the movie's production budget was basically cut in half when the studio that was supposed to put up half the money at the last minute went, "Yeah, no, we're not giving you any cash."
Mm-hmm.
See, you mentioned a couple things that I think are really important to talk about with this. The one is that Langella, he loved this role. And you can tell when an actor is loving their role and when they are doing it because they're getting a paycheck. And I think, that is something that's really important there. Robert Duncan McNeil, I was listening to an interview with him a couple weeks ago because he just launched a podcast talking about Star Trek Voyager, and he was on the circuit advertising for that, and he talked about this movie, and he talked about how it was a really good learning ground. Like they said, yes, it didn't get the love that it should have deserved, but we learned so much there. And he talked about how grateful he was to have worked on it and to work with the people there, because that has popped up throughout his career, and especially now that he's directing, where he's seen how some things can just get a little bit big and difficult to direct. And I think it's really important to also point out that Gary Goddard directed one of my favorite cartoons of my childhood, Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. So I had all the toys and the ship and the you say power on and the thing powered on. It was awesome. So you may have swayed my opinion.
All right. Well, then Classic Sci-Fi Court has done its job, and that would be defense enough. However, I believe that I shall render this movie not guilty of being terrible, and also I believe that anyone who says that the soundtrack of this movie is poor or in any way subpar, I believe those people are living in a box, living in a cardboard
box.
So, thank you.
And if you need a copy, Shout Factory put out a really nice Blu-ray, I think last year, that you can still get.
Neat.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've been watching over the past couple of weeks. The soundtrack is more difficult to get your hands on. I've been trying. That's not an easy get.
Yeah.
It's that and The Last Starfighter.
Oh, dang.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So let's see.
I'm surprised, Beldar, that I didn't hear you offering up an objection or
I am
arguing,
outnumbered.
arguing on the side of the prosecution.
He's surrounded.
And I also
He picks his battles.
I spent the better part of an hour crapping on this film a little while ago today. So. I mean, I don't like I said on the other show. I think this has a lot to do with what age you were when you saw the movie. I was when did you say this was 80?
87.
87. Okay, so I was 23 and not really in the right frame of mind for a so bad it's good movie. I don't honestly remember why I even went to see it. Maybe my group of friends wanted to see it. I had no use for He-Man. And I watched this movie today, and I'm sorry, it was painful. You're right. Langella eats the scenery better than anyone. And that, the moments where he was on screen were great, but almost everything else was just awful. But that doesn't make it not enjoyable. And if you love the movie, then that's groovy. And I you all obviously really enjoy the film, so I didn't want to rain on your parade here.
I think, though, it bears a similarity to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in that it has, the difference is it has a lead guy who is super into it in Frank Langella versus LXG, which has a lead guy who is super not into it in Sean Connery. But both of them come from source materials that are immensely rich and cool and absorbing, I guess, because those He-Man toys are just colorful and neat, and I had a bunch of them, and probably you guys did too, a lot of you guys, it's I wanted more from this movie, and I am hoping that someday I get more with more Masters of the Universe stuff in live action. But in the meantime, this movie does fine. This movie will be all right until then.
I was 23, not 27, by the way. I'm not that old. But I am bad at math.
Well, me too. Alabama public school education. So, Mr. Rick, are you prepared to present your case?
I am. Yes, I am. Okay, imagine, if you will, 1982. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
And David Lynch does a thing to science fiction, especially science fiction films, that echoed across the ages. And as my British friends like to say about people that become too into themselves, science fiction cinema crawled up its own ass after Dune came out. And for years, everything just got so pretentious and so incomprehensible, and we needed a film to take science fiction down a peg and say, lighten the hell up, stop taking yourself so seriously, and just enjoy the genre. And I'm gonna read the cast list before I announce the name of this film. And I'm gonna start from the bottom. Let's see, we've got Bruce Vilanch, Jeremy West, Natalie Cord, John Carradine, Ron Perlman, John Matuzak, Angelica Houston. You ought to know what this is by now. Michael D. Roberts, Mary Crosby, and the amazing Robert Urich. The film is Ice Pirates, a film that gets way more flack than it deserves. It is not a good movie by any stretch, and they didn't set out to make a good movie. It's a fun, absolute piss take of what Dune did to science fiction. Now, don't get me wrong. Dune is one of my all-time favorite books. I have read Dune at least 5 times, and many of the other books at least twice. I love the Dune series, but it doesn't get much more serious than Dune. And then David Lynch came and made it serious, pretentious, and incomprehensible. And then directors just ran with that crap, and Ice Pirates came in and said, all right, we're going to take all of this trappings of, a future that's 20,000 years in the future, but everyone's using swords and medieval titles, and water is impossible to find. So that's the currency, but that really doesn't make sense. And they spoof Dune. They kind of spoof Hell Goes to Frogtown. There's some Star Trek spoofs in there. You've got Angelica Houston and Ron Perlman. What more do you need? And robot fights and time travel and just silliness and castration jokes that are actually funny. I just rewatched the movie maybe a year and a half ago. And it's always dangerous when you watch a movie, especially a comedy from the 80s, because very often you get into, not cool anymore. I don't recall anything in Ice Pirates that was like, oh, we really can't do that now. It was just fun, but it wasn't mean. It played on some tropes, but not in a mean-spirited way. It was just it's a sweet, silly comedy that spoofs without venom, and I really love this film. And I highly recommend it. And I lay this before the court.
I agree 100%. I saw this movie in the theater, as is proper for such a film. I think I went just because it was a sci-fi flick, and I love Robert Urich in everything on television. But the fact that he was funny, like what? Who is this? How is Robert Urich? And how is Robert Urich a funny actor? And but yeah, there's so much good stuff. I would like to I need to rewatch it again because as we've done Classic Sci-Fi Court, this has come up and multiple times. But you're the first to present the full defense. So.
And also, it's one of the few movies Ron Perlman's in where you see his face.
So, Gary, Brandon, Scott, Ice Pirates.
I love the robots. The robots are hilarious. It's one of my mother's favorite movies. When it came out on cable, we recorded it, which was a big deal back then because, VHS tapes were like $20 a piece, which is like $40 now. So
that's
devoting precious.
Exactly. That's why you have to use LP. Get all the videos on there you can.
Yes. So, the fact that we devoted precious tape space to it. But yeah, and how do you not love a movie with jokes by Bruce Vilanch? The guy's a comedy genius.
Yeah. Brandon, have you?
I've never seen this, so I'm going to have to recuse myself from it.
All right. Well, you've got an assignment for our next. But Scott,
Brandon can come back for the appeal.
Yes.
It's noted that I like some pretty terrible movies, so I don't.
You, sir, are in the right place. Gary, tell them what we watched on the classic track last year.
Oh God, I still hurt. We watched Mac and Me.
Mac and Me.
Yeah, and I had to stay for the whole thing. When we did the Star Wars Holiday Special, I was able to donate my money and get out before it started. But for Mac and Me, I was there the whole time. It still hurts.
What we do, this is one of the most fun things that we get to do. We show a very bad, movie for charity, and then when we show it, you come to watch it, and we lock the door. You have to donate to Dragon Con's official charity to get out. And
the longer you wait, the less it costs to get out. So like for the holiday special, before it even started, I dropped a 20 and I was out. If you stay the whole time, it's free.
Didn't tell me he was doing that. He said, "Boop, I'm done." And I'm like, "What?" So I was in the room for what seemed like 6 hours watching the holiday special.
It's Life Day.
Yeah, it is Life Day. But
your whole life day.
Sucks your life out of you day.
Was the holiday special being shown on a big screen?
Yeah.
I would donate $5 to be allowed to stay in the room for that.
Thank you. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. We got to do that again. But
Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park is a classic, though.
We showed that one.
We did that one too.
That was the second year.
Alan just commented that happened a couple. years ago.
I'm reading it in the comments there.
Oh yeah, we did that, and we had Kiss cosplayers and a member of a Kiss cover band in the room in costume when we watched it. It was great. But Mac and Me is more than just that one scene that Paul Rudd plays on every talk show when he appears.
Every Conan.
It's just every Conan, yeah. But it's more than that. That kid plummets to his death like 3 more times in 3 separate incidents. The entire movie takes place on a hill. The poor jerk. He loses control of his wheelchair, no joke, at least 4 more times in the movie. It is it's something.
Well, when it's safe to be in person again, I definitely have to put Dragon Con on my bucket list. Well, it's already on my bucket list, but I need to move it up my bucket list.
And we actually had one person who was on our panel in the audience that fell in love with the movie, and his wife said, she told him, if you buy this movie, I will kill you. If you find a way to get this movie into the house, if one of your friends buy it for you, I will kill them and then you. So I'm just trying to figure out a way around that.
It's the weirdest domestic dispute call we've ever had.
I would like to present another opinion from the jury pool from a friend of ours, Mr. John Irons, about Ice Pirates.
Oh,
so good.
Yeah, Space Hercules.
Before we get moving on too far, I should say that as far as Ice Pirates is concerned, I have not seen the film in its entirety. But as a young child, I saw various scenes from it here and there, as the film was favored by both of my parents, and I dislike arguing a case against movies that my parents will full on belly laugh at.
Yeah, indeed.
It's hard to think of a moment that is more joyous than hearing your parents in the room with you just laughing their faces off at something that they think is hilarious. And you're usually not going to agree because you're not going to understand the humor.
Yeah.
But
you're going to be like, well, if my parents like it, then clearly I must not. And
my parents aren't cool. They don't know what's funny.
Why? Yeah. Now I'm getting that from my child, and every time she says, well, I don't think I'm going to like this. And then I show it to her, and she always begrudgingly says to me, you were right.
Well, that's the worst thing for a child to say to their parent ever.
Worst. I relish every time she does it. But guys, we have, because we are all professionals, we have hit the mark exactly at 1 minute and a few seconds. Thank you guys very, very much for coming to this special HomeCon bonus edition of Classic Sci-Fi Court. We're gonna put all of your contact info, but let's go around the room and plug yourselves once again. Starting with Mr. Rick.
Okay, you can check out my podcasts on the Infinite Diversity Network. I've got Starbase 66, which is a general Star Trek / science fiction, fantasy, horror, genre fiction podcast. I have Open the Iris, which is my Stargate watch-through podcast. And a couple of new ones that are going to debut very, very soon. So check it out at starbasecommand.net for all of that fun stuff.
Gary?
You can find me on the Twitter here as at Gary_Mitchel. That is Mitchell with 1 L. Yes, Star Trek fans, it is my real name. You can find me at DragonCon with Joe as on the American Sci-Fi Classics track, and in our Facebook group, Facebook groups or groups just do a Google Classic DragonCon American Sci-Fi Classics. And I write a weekly article called Slip Discs, where I tell you what nerdy things are coming out every Tuesday on physical media. I try to put it up on Monday night so you can have your shopping list on Tuesday.
Branden?
All right, my podcast is called Fandom. You can find me at fandompodcast.com. I've got a couple more things that are coming up. They are, I've got a first recording of a new show actually tomorrow at HomeCon called Make This Podcast. I do podcast consulting, and we're turning it into a game show. So, head over to fandompodcast.com, or actually, head over to geeknerdnetwork.com. That's my network that I'm on. And there's a lot of really good geeky shows there, but all my random shows that I end up doing will end up over there on the front page there too. So geeknerdnetwork.com.
Well, thank you guys. I'm sorry. Scott was sitting in the courtroom all by himself. Scott, where your stuff is?
I can be found on the Cosmic Potato Network in a few places, not the least of which being my own show, The Prime Direction. You can find that on Twitter at PrimeDirectPod. You can also find me and my graphic artwork on Twitter at PlanetRise, or come visit my website, www.planetrisecreative.com.
Can I do one more quick plug that I keep forgetting to mention?
Of course.
Tomorrow at 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern, we'll be doing a live Starbase 66 where I and Mr. Matteson down there and Sean Ray of the Cosmic Potato Podcast and several of my other co-hosts from Starbase are going to tackle the great bugaboo of Star Trek, the Godwin's Law, if you will, of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry's vision.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Star Trek, you mean the Majel Barrett universe?
Well, that is awesome. I thank you for reminding me. I need to put up the big schedule of at HomeCon stuff. There's still, I believe, there may be more stuff coming. I don't know if there's anything happening later on tonight, but all day tomorrow there's tons of stuff. And Gary and I will be back with the first online version of the revolution in sci-fi technology, Roll a Panel. And you guys are invited to come onto that. But in the meantime, join us next time when Gary Mitchell says,
I object. This is not the sandwich I ordered.
Thank you guys very, very much. We will see you soon.
Thank you for having us on, Joe.